Test, test. Test, test.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. My name is Eric Blank. This is the Commissioner's Weekly Meeting for April 9th, 2025. Commissioner Gilman, any preliminary remarks? Are you ready to approve the consent agenda?
Good morning. I would vote to approve the consent agenda.
Commissioner Plant?
Good morning. I would vote to approve the consent agenda as well.
As would I. Director White, Ms. Federico, do we have any public comments today? Ms. Glustrom, if you're out there, you have all three of us. Hey, how are you?
Sitting here out in the woods. No, I'm just kidding you. Good morning, commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Leslie Glustrom, and as you know, I've been an intervener and a participant at the PUC for over 20 years now, which makes me not too many other people have been around that long. So I'm here today to talk to you briefly about two things. First, I wanted to make sure that you and all the PUC staff knew that we now have Public Service Company of Colorado's 2024 10K. And when you look at their bottom line, they had 782 million of after-tax net income, up 11% from 2023. That's a lot. It's 14% of their overall revenue, so that's a lot. I just want to make sure everybody knows that as their sales have been flat, we expect sales to be going up here in the coming years. We'll find out about that. But their sales have been flat to this point. When I began 20 years ago, after-tax net income was a little over 200 million. So their sales have stayed flat. Their after-tax net income has way more than tripled. 782 million, $782 million, plus 32 million extra. Let's keep that in mind the next time if they come to the commission with their hand out saying they need another rate increase, because there's good reason to believe they're doing more than just fine as it is. So, but as I've said before, they're happy to spend money. When we ask them to spend money, they're like, sure, let's spend money, and let's make it capital expenditures, and you know how that game goes. So the next thing I wanted to talk to you about was the general concept, and I think you all know that I have a huge amount of respect and appreciation for each of you. We are so lucky to have three, frankly, amazing commissioners. I don't think many other states are in this position. And I say with all sincerity that I am deeply grateful for that and have a huge amount of respect. But what I'm seeing is something I've seen a lot over the last 20 years, which is that Colorado has made a lot of mistakes, big, expensive mistakes, by driving backwards into the future. It doesn't work well to drive backwards anywhere. Some teenagers try it. My husband has a couple stories, but it's not a good idea, and it doesn't tend to work out well. And we can see that very clearly in Colorado with respect to Pueblo Unit 3, the coal plant that Excel calls Comanche 3, I think still. It was very clear to hundreds of us who testified, this is a mistake. You are, in so many words, driving backwards into the future. You're looking back to see that coal plants are the right idea, when we can tell you right now, it is not a good idea and it won't turn out well. So the coal plant was working in round numbers, about $1 billion to build, 100 million a year to operate plus, so over $1 billion a decade to operate it. So by the time we come to the end, we will have spent $3 billion on a mistake. Now we're getting to the time where 3 billion is not as big as it used to be, but it's still a really big number. And you can see clearly from where you sit that it was a mistake. And it's not that long ago that, Chairman Sopkin and Chairman Binns were like, okay, we'll just do this, And they're smart people, but they couldn't look into the future. Same was true with Clean Air, Clean Jobs. Clean Air, Clean Jobs, some gas plants, but really, frankly, it was a Trojan horse to put expensive pollution controls on the coal plant in Brush, the one Excel calls Pawnee, and the coal plant in Hayden. And we already know now that basically less than 10 years since they finished those sulfur and nitrogen controls on the Brush and Hayden coal plants, that was a bad idea, because again, they couldn't look to the future. Now, you're all really smart and really dedicated and really hardworking, and I honor all that. But we need you to stop driving backwards into the future. The old paradigm was distant generation and long transmission and complex distribution. And anybody who listens to even a newscast once a month, what's less every week or every day, knows that that doesn't work well. How many outages do we have around the country now because of the floods and the ice storms and the tornadoes that we've had just in the last few weeks? And how many outages have we had in Colorado? So with a system that's supposed to depreciate over 60 to 80 years, which is the story generally with transmission, it won't be long before the commissioners who are sitting in your chairs will go, why did we spend all that money on a 20th century model? So I'm here. I'm going to show up every chance I get to talk to you about driving forwards into the future. The extreme weather we are seeing now is nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to what future commissioners, to say nothing of our kids and grandkids and nieces and nephews and all that sort of thing, what they're going to see in 2035 and 45 and 55. 2025 will be so mild in comparison. So building a system that depends on big long wires strung over long distances and complex distribution networks, they're gonna shake their heads in a probably worse way than we shake our heads over Pueblo Unit 3. So I'm asking you to do your very best. I know it's hard, but you're all frankly smart. You all understand all of this, but now you have to make sure this big ship doesn't just keep sailing along using the 20th century model and spending a lot of money that within not very many years, whether I'm alive to see it or not, in not very many years, future commissioners are going to go, well, that was not money well spent. We need to focus much more on local generation and storage, making it much less reliant on the big transmission grid. We can't do that by snapping our fingers, but we've got to start, and we've got to have a much more balanced approach to where all these billions of dollars that you're facing are going. So thank you so much for this time. I appreciate it. You're going to see me a lot because I am determined not to have my state make more big mistakes by driving backwards into the future, which I've seen way too much of over the 20 years that I've been doing this. So appreciate you all absolutely deeply. Thank you for your hard work, and thank you for this time.
Thank you, Ms. Glestrom. Let's go to proceeding agenda item, comments to the Federal Communications Commission.
Good morning, Commissioners. Daryl Branson from the Telecom section. Before you today are a set of comments to be filed with the Federal Communications Commission with your approval. On March 12, 2025, the FCC issued Public Notice DA 25-219, simultaneously creating docket number GN 25-133 to receive comments. The public notice notes that President Trump, through a series of executive orders, has ordered administrative agencies such as the FCC to begin reviewing existing regulations and identifying rules that the President says should be eliminated for a variety of different reasons. In addition to the specific reasons provided, Executive Order 14192 orders such agencies to identify 10 rules for elimination for every new rule created. The public notice goes on to request assistance from the public in identifying rules that the FCC should consider for elimination. Rather than identify any specific rule for either elimination or protection, the draft comments before you today encourage the FCC to take special caution when considering rules for elimination, particularly rules related to the areas of consumer protection, public safety, and accessibility. The draft comments note that such rules, when effective, have positive benefits that are difficult to quantify in a cost-benefit analysis, and urges the FCC to keep this in mind when considering such rules. The deadline for filing initial comments to the public notice is April 11th, and if approved by the Commission today, Commission staff will file these comments before the deadline. With that, I will try to answer your questions and await your discussion and vote.
Commissioner Goman.
Thanks, Mr. Branson, for putting this together. Very much appreciate it, and I'm supportive the comments and urging a measured approach, especially as we understand many of these regulations really serve to protect the public and ensure that they're receiving quality service for affordable prices and have the accessibility that's necessary to ensure that all of our residents are able to participate, receive, and have communications that are effective. So very much appreciate your approach here, and I sincerely hope that it will be an effective communication.
Commissioner Plant?
Likewise, I support the comments and appreciate your work on this.
As do I. I don't think there's any written decision, and you can just send the comments to the FCC. So thank you, Mr. Branson.
Thank you.
Proceeding number 21A-0141E, Mr. Eden, Ms. McLaughlin.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Michael Eden with your advisory staff. On March 31st, 2025, Public Service Company of Colorado filed an unopposed motion for a variance from decision number C25-0024 regarding the deadline to file a motion to approve the independent auditor. And as background for the listening public, the Commission issued decision number C25-0024 back in January of this year. The decision grants in part and denies in part Public Service's Clean Energy Plan delivery motion. In doing so, the Commission approved, among other things, a process by which developers could seek price relief based on changes of federal law. This was intended to encourage developers to move forward with projects, even though future tariffs or changes to tax credits might impact the project's financials. An independent auditor, or IA, is to help oversee the price relief process. To ensure this IA is ready and available if and when needed, the Commission directed Public Service to submit a motion to approve the proposed IA, together with an IA scope of work, no later than March 31st, 2025. In the unopposed motion Public Service submitted, the company asserts it has been working diligently to select an IA and finalize a scope of work, but that it needs a short extension of the March 31st deadline. The company requests a 2-week extension of time to file the motion for approval of the IA until April 15th, 2025. Public Service argues this short extension will not materially delay the price relief process or prejudice any party or independent power producer. The company also asks that the Commission waive remaining response time to the motion, asserting its requested relief is unopposed. I have a recommendation, but I'll pause first for your discussion.
I think we'd welcome a recommendation.
Sure. Advisors recommend granting the unopposed motion and waiving remaining response time. While the ability for developers to seek price relief based on changes of federal law is important, we agree with Public Service that a 2-week delay in selecting an IA is unlikely to prejudice anyone.
Commissioner Gellman.
Thanks, Mr. Eden. I agree.
Commissioner Plant. I agree as well. As do I. Thank you, Mr. Eden.
Thank you.
Proceeding number 24AL-0377E, Public Service Company, Tommy Use Rates. Mr. Davis.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ron Davis of the Commission's advisory staff. On February 19th, at its regular weekly business meeting, the Commission adopted the bulk of an order establishing new time of use rates for electric customers of Public Service Company of Colorado. The Commissioners concluded their discussion on all but 2 topics: future filing directives and the scheduling and logistics of a technical conference to review the final TOU rates. I'd like to set both of these items up for finalizing the decisions for the order this morning. So first, Commissioner Gilman at the meeting on February 19th suggested that the issue on future filing directives return for more discussion at a future weekly meeting. Recall that in the case, the Colorado Solar and Storage Association and the Solar Energy Industries Association asked the Commission to direct Public Service to develop and file a critical peak rebate program, and that would be for residential customers to enhance demand management, and it would complement the proposed time of use rate structures at issue in this case. The City of Boulder asked the Commission to direct Public Service to evaluate a new schedule time of use rate for residential customers with low demand. But they would ask that not in this case, but in a future rate case. The rate design could specify an amount of on-peak kilowatt-hour usage that would be exempt from the higher on-peak pricing. Boulder also recommends that the Commission direct Public Service to develop a residential critical peak pricing pilot to be implemented no later than June 1st of next year. In response to such suggestions, Western Resource Advocate notes in its SOP, the Public Service has committed to investigate a residential peak time rebate pilot as part of its various demand-side management program offerings. And this agreement is via settlement in its 2024 through 2026 DSM and Beneficial Electrification Plan that was approved in proceeding number 23A 589EG. Given that existing Commission direction and plan, WRA recommends that the Commission decline to use this proceeding to direct the exploration of other similar voluntary rate options. So the question for you is whether the Commission should direct Public Service to make any specific types of filings in future proceedings addressing new rate designs for electric utility service.
Commissioner Gilman, do you have a proposal or a motion or some ideas?
Something in between, maybe. No, less formal. Based on my recollection, we've already ordered the company in the next DSM BESI, which will be next summer, to really kind of put forth and evaluate a fulsome view of demand response, demand management, demand flexibility. And I thought it was very helpful how staff laid out in their testimony in the TOU case that kind of the TOU rates set this foundation that just about everyone participates in, short opt-outs to the rate, to try to influence behavior. And really what we're looking to do in total is optimize and minimize total system costs by improving the operation of the system, smoothing out the peak. So that's kind of the foundational layer, but that there is still all of this room, and we could find tremendous value in looking at more aggressive voluntary options to ensure that any customers that are able and willing to participate to a much higher degree in demand response and demand flexibility can do so, and we have kind of appropriate mechanisms to allow them to benefit as they're benefiting the system. So in reviewing this, I still think that's the right forum. We kind of have it set up to happen there. But given all that was brought up in this case, I think it would serve us well in the interim, in the next year or so, to probably work with our REI staff and to really evaluate and put forth some commissioner information meetings and things to evaluate what's going on in the state, what's the state of play here for these types of programs, who's offering what, so we can really increase the knowledge and involvement of the commission as well as stakeholders in anticipation of getting that information and kind of having that full analysis happen in the DSM-SI that would be next summer. So that was sort of my thought. I'm very interested in figuring out how do we get on track to really evaluate and value these options and see how could we have successful voluntary programs that really increase our ability to flex load and optimize costs across the entire system. So I still think it's DSM-SI, but I think there's work we can be doing in the interim to better prepare us, better prepare those future parties and stakeholders to really participate in a big conversation about that. And I think, like, fair warning, that this is a big topic. For that DSM-SI, we really want to see progress, I think, is the message that I'd want to send today.
And so it sounds like you're looking for language in the order that basically summarizes what you said and provides that guidance for the future case and for discussions over the coming months. Is that a fair summary of what you're asking for?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we should really signal our significant interest in advancing this and our intent to do so in that next proceeding. But then also, coordinate internally afterwards with our staff to bring forth those opportunities, probably through CIMs and involvement of other, utilities. There are some very interesting things going on in the state, and bring those forth so that we can raise the level of knowledge and readiness to adjudicate those issues and that CSMSI, so we can really take a big step forward, which I think is necessary.
Well, I'm supportive of that request, and would maybe I don't know that we have to do it in this order, but frame it more broadly. This utility is seeking or claiming to the financial community it needs to spend $22 billion over the next 5 years, much of that to address needs between 6 to 9, late in the evening, and I think we should be looking at not only DSM and demand response, but sort of distributed solar plus storage, EV charging, clean heat plants, controlling water heaters, and other things to do with pricing to influence that capital need. So again, I don't know, we need to put it in this order, but I'd say it more broadly, and my interest, especially as we go to commissioner information meetings, is more broad. I don't know if you have any comments to that, and then I'll turn it back to you, Commissioner Plant.
No, I think that's fair, and I agree with kind of a more broad look at it, especially considering, we have many programs now that are promoting different kind of electrification, and it's essential that we link these issues and that we be considering that the demand, flexibility, and response of these new, very technologically capable, internet-connected new loads be an essential part of bringing them on. And it's a tightrope, right? You want the adoption, but we don't want adoption in a way that harms the system. We want adoption in a way that benefits the system, and that is completely possible. We just have to ensure we have the adjudication to lay the groundwork to set the incentives and set the program to incent that behavior. But of course, as we're encouraging people to adopt these things, we should be linking together these different proceedings and these different concepts to ensure that when rebates are being offered or whatever's happening, that it's also, we have the intent to intelligently manage those devices as part of the bigger picture.
Commissioner Plant, you want to jump in?
Sure. Yeah, I like that approach and your idea of sort of examining this a little bit further. And I wonder if, we've got, this is TOU is another another proceeding that we have, identified is also tied in with all these other various different proceedings. And I'm wondering if as we go forward in the future, it's better for us to think about, rather than thinking about this from a from a technology perspective, or, to think of it from a consumer-sided, perspective, consumer-sided resources, distribution system, and bulk system, as sort of the categories. And I think what we have now kind of grew out of, it used to be DSM was energy efficiency, and that was it. And then, then we added in, various different renewable resources that were consumer-sided. We added in BE that's consumer-sided. We have the BPP program that we're, pushing, that's going to have a great deal of integration with consumers. We've got TOUs that's going to require the integration of consumers. And, increasingly consumers are becoming a critical part of the overall planning and the overall resource mix that we're talking about. And so it might be one of the things that we can kind of discuss over this next year is how we move away from sort of a technology specific approach and more to what is the component of the system that we're focused on, and what are all the different things that play into that component. But I like your approach, and I was wondering, are you suggesting an M docket, or are you just suggesting that this is something that we would address through SIMs and just general discussions?
I hadn't contemplated that it should be an M docket. I think we can probably achieve this through a series of a few commissioner information meetings and see where that goes, and just to essentially have the venue to raise our knowledge and awareness of what's going on, so that we can understand during that adjudication what best practice would look like.
You've touched on something that I've been struggling with, which is shifting from energy efficiency, maybe where we've been very effective, to the point where we've seen very modest load growth, sales growth over 15 years, but been less effective at managing peak demand. So our load factor has decreased fairly significantly. So, and it made sense at the time, but as we go forward and capital spending seems to be driven by that late evening peak demand, if we can focus in an integrated way, as you suggest, all these technologies, I think we can benefit customers in the system. So, Mr. Davis, does that give you what you need for a TBC order?
Yes, I'll integrate this decision and discussion within the broader TBC order that will be circulated shortly.
Excellent. And I think you had one more issue on the path forward.
Yes. So now comes the question about the technical conference. Since the February discussion at the weekly meeting, advisors have determined that the executable rate design model that staff had provided in the record would allow us to calculate the new residential time of use rate for schedule RETOU based on a 5 to 9 p.m. on-peak period that is year-round with a 2.7 to 1 price ratio. And because Energy Outreach Colorado and the other parties have access to that particular hearing exhibit, a technical conference may not be essential to go through the design of the default rate for residential customers. We also have a good sense, based on the extensive record here, what the other time of use rates are going to look like when the final calculations are made. So I'd also like to point out that the need for immediate customer education and awareness building through a technical conference is diminished, because these rates are not going to go into effect immediately, but will be coming into effect after Public Service continues working with stakeholders through the stakeholder workshop, and that there is more customer education and outreach around these new rate designs that wasn't known at the time when Energy Outreach Colorado put forward its request for the technical conference. So with that, I'd like to present an alternative for you to consider that I did not present in February, and that is this option. In lieu of a technical conference, the Commission could direct Public Service to file, and that directive would come from a specific ABC order from today. The pro forma tariff sheets, the same tariff sheets that were filed with the initial case filing last year, showing both the new time of use rates and how those new rates will replace the existing time of use rates, and the supporting work papers for those. That should satisfy Energy Outreach Colorado's desire for more information on the final rate design. This would be kind of a paper technical conference. And after that is filed, I could present those results to you, just as I would after a technical conference. And then that would be a way to finalize the rates here and put us in a position for a compliance tariff filing to implement the Commission's decision. So again, the two options are to schedule a technical conference. I have some dates if the Commission wants to hear that en banc, or it could move forward with this alternative option where the tariff sheets would be filed only, and I would present those, and then the deliberations would be final.
I like the alternative approach of not having a technical conference. Does that work for you, Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, I'm good with option B of filing the tariff sheets.
I'm confused. Which one was option A? Which one was option B?
Well, I presume the second one was option B.
Commissioner Plant? It was either that or two. Yeah, 2B. I'd approve that as well. And that can be an ABC order, Mr. Davis, outlining that alternative. Proceeding number 24AL-0481E, Black Hills PCA. Mr. Davis, Ms. Dundas.
Right. So this is the 2025 transmission cost adjustment for Black Hills Colorado Electric. Pursuant to Black Hills Commission-approved TCA tariff, the company filed its new TCA rates for effect January 1st of 2025 last November. However, the Commission prevented that TCA rate from taking effect at a weekly meeting in December, and it set the matter for hearing and suspended the effective date of the TCA tariff to May 1st. Trial staff of the Commission timely filed an intervention of right on January 31st, and no other intervention pleadings were filed. The Commission discussed next steps in this case at the March 19th weekly meeting and subsequently issued decision number C25-218I that explained that the proceedings should move forward through adjudication only if staff continues to allege that the 2025 TCA revenue requirement is calculated in a way that is contrary to Black Hills' currently effective TCA tariff sheets. The order directed staff to confer with Black Hills and set April 1st as the deadline either for staff to withdraw its intervention or for Black Hills and staff to make a joint filing for a procedural schedule to move the case forward to adjudication. On March 31st, Black Hills filed an amended advice letter after meeting with staff. The amended tariff sheets implement a modified 2025 TCA tariff or rate that reflects only the incremental transmission projects that add transmission capacity since the test year used to establish the electric base rates in proceeding number 24AL275E, and these rates are designed to recover such costs for the period May 1st through December 31st of this year. On April 1st, staff timely filed a notice of a conditional withdrawal of its intervention. In the notice, staff states that it met with Black Hills on March 25th, and the company agreed to provide staff with additional information relevant to the then anticipated amended advice letter filing. Staff reports that it will review the information and explains that that's why its notice of withdrawal is conditional. So this morning, I'm presenting the amended 2025 TCA for Black Hills. The work papers filed with the amendment show a TCA annual revenue requirement of $1.38 million. That amount is significantly less than the incremental annual revenue of $4 million that was initially filed last November. Staff has been aware that this matter is up for discussion today at the weekly meeting and has not further addressed the withdrawal of its intervention. So I suggest the Commission proceed now, assuming that the amended advice letter is uncontested. So I can provide a recommendation or listen to your discussion.
No, I think we'd welcome a recommendation.
I recommend that the Commission adopt a decision today allowing the 2025 TCA set forth in the amended tariff sheets to take effect on May 1st and to close the proceeding.
I support the recommendation and would just say I'm really pleased to see this revised filing, which would result in overall customer rates that are almost 1.5% lower as compared to the initial filing. Although I'm not totally clear on exactly what happened and why, I greatly appreciate staff digging into this and negotiating an outcome that results in lower rates. So thanks to the staff and the company for doing this. It makes a meaningful and quantifiable difference. So, Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, thanks. I agree with your comments, and I agree with Mr. Davis' recommendation.
Commissioner Plant? I agree as well. And that can be an ABC decision, Mr. Davis, consistent with your recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Proceeding number 24A-0442E, Public Service Company of Colorado 24 Just Transition. Mr. Eden, Mr. DeCenso.
Yes, good morning again. I'm Michael Eden with your advisory staff. Before you this morning is the motion to reschedule the Pueblo public comment hearing filed last week by the Environmental Justice Coalition, Colorado Renewable Energy Society, and Physicians for Social Responsibility. And going forward, I'll refer to all the parties that joined the motion as the move-ins. As background, in decision number C25-0219, issued on March 25th, the Commission scheduled 2 in-person public comment hearings and 1 remote public comment hearing. One of the in-person public comment hearings was set to take place in Pueblo on April 17, 2025. In the motion to reschedule, the move-ins request the Commission move the April 17th public comment hearing to sometime between May 27th and June 6th. The move-ins argue that holding the in-person public comment hearing at a later date would allow community members in Pueblo to provide comments and feedback based not just on the company's direct case, but also intervener answer testimony, the deadline for which is April 18, and public services rebuttal testimony, the deadline for which is May 23rd. In addition, the move-ins assert there is insufficient time between the issuance of the decision scheduling the public comment hearing and the April 17th public comment hearing, and that a later date would likely result in a more successful public comment process. In the alternative, if the Commission decides to maintain the currently scheduled April 17th public comment hearing, the move-ins request that the Commission schedule a second in-person public comment hearing in Pueblo between May 27th and June 6th, 2025. Along with the motion to reschedule, on April 1st, 2025, the Commission received a joint public comment from the following 5 organizations: Western Clean Energy Campaign, Mountain Mamas, 350 Colorado, Mi Familia in Action, and Progress Now Colorado. The joint public comment requests that the Commission consider moving all 3 public comment hearings to after the submission of rebuttal testimony, but prior to the start of the evidentiary hearing. In the alternative, the public comment requests that the Commission schedule an additional in-person public comment hearing and an additional remote public comment hearing. The joint public comment argues it is critical for members of the public to have an opportunity to address the Commission after all testimony has been submitted. On April 7th, the Board of County Commissioners of Pueblo County, the City of Pueblo, and the Pueblo Economic Development Corporation, which I'll collectively refer to as the Pueblo Interveners, filed a response in opposition to the motion to reschedule. The Pueblo Interveners argue the move-ins could have raised their scheduling preferences during the conferral process that led to Public Service filing a consensus procedural schedule on January 17th. The Pueblo Interveners further note that the move-ins rely on speculation about the additional time needed for community members to prepare for the public comment hearing. Finally, the Pueblo Interveners assert that rescheduling the public comment hearing to the week of May 26th will likely lead to less participation due to the Memorial Day holiday and graduations. And finally, I'll note that the town of Hayden and Routt County also opposed the motion to reschedule, although they did not file a response. I'll stop here for your discussion unless you would like a recommendation.
No, if you can give us a recommendation, that'd be great.
Sure. Advisors recommend denying the motion to reschedule. As the Pueblo Interveners note, the move-ins scheduling preference does not appear in the consensus procedural schedule submitted back in January. Moreover, the current timing of the public comment hearing provides an opportunity for interveners and public service to incorporate and respond to public comments in their answer and rebuttal testimony. Nevertheless, the move-ins and the organizations that authored the joint public comment raise a legitimate desire to have a public comment hearing after answer and rebuttal testimony have been filed. Thus, advisors recommend the Commission keep the currently scheduled in-person public comment hearing on April 17th, but schedule an additional remote public comment hearing on June 5th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m.
Makes sense to me. Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Eden. I agree with your recommendation, and this is something we've been working on consistently. At what point in the process is it the most helpful? Is it the most effective? And I think you've effectively pointed out a lot of the pros and cons of the different times. So I appreciate your recommendation that we'll give one additional opportunity after all the testimonies in, and hopefully that alleviates a lot of the concerns here.
Commissioner Plant?
I agree as well.
And I think that that can be an ABC decision, denying the motion, but scheduling an additional remote public comment hearing consistent with your recommendation. So thanks for working that through, Mr. Eden. Greatly appreciate it.
Of course, thank you.
Proceeding number 24M0060G, 61G, and maybe 62G. Mr. Mendelson, who I think is remote, And Ms. Rosati, I don't know if you want to take them sequentially or together, but Mr. Mendelson, over to you.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. I'm Mike Mendelson of your advisory team. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, good. Okay, well, I'm joined by Wendy Rosati of Commission Counsel, as you mentioned. And yes, we'd like to take all three items together, if that's okay, as they had some consistent issues across the proceedings. These three cases were each brought in early 2024. Notably, the gas rules allow these smaller LDCs, or local distribution companies, to file their first and second GIP filings as informational filings. The instant filings represent the first GIP applications. The second GIP applications are due in early 2026. After receiving each application, the Commission opened M dockets to facilitate a process for parties to join and incorporate comments by parties and the public. For each proceeding, UCA CEO and staff entered as parties of right. Council and advisory staff developed comment protocols, led an interactive workshop over the summer, developed a staff report, and received additional comments in response to those staff reports. The staff reports had numerous common recommendations which advisors will present across the three LDCs, some of which represent potential changes to the GIP rules. To be efficient with our time this morning, we will present only a sampling of party comments, staff recommendations, and party feedback to those recommendations. The first GIP I'll present was filed by Colorado Natural Gas and docketed as 24M0060G. CNG serves about 5,500 customers, mostly residential. The company submitted peak design temperatures for 5 regions according to 30-year weather data. CNG states that it does 1 in 5-year project planning that encompasses projects of all sizes. The company indicated that projects generally come through 3 development streams: system safety needs, capacity expansion needs, and large new business needs. CNG's GIP includes 3 planned projects pursuant to Rule 4551F. That the Eastern High Pressure Steel Line Replacement Project. This project is classified as 60% system safety and integrity and 40% capacity expansion. The GCC Concrete Plant Pueblo project, which is classified as a new business project, and the Port Colorado Trunk Line and Infill project, also classified as new business. The Port Colorado project is designed to serve a large new business district east of Denver that is in very early formation. As required in the rules, CNG submitted the total annual capital investment over the GIP period and details indicated of proposed materials, pipe lengths and diameters, and maps of project locations. CNG determined that none of the projects were either eligible or suitable for an alternatives analysis. CNG also conducted an existing infrastructure assessment per the gas rules. The company explains that it has just under 2,000 customer-owned yard lines or coils, and that it replaced only 11 to date at a cost of $5,600 each. CNG states that it's not aware of any pipe fittings or other materials that are not compatible with hydrogen blending up to 20%. It also states that it's piloting an advanced leak detection platform called Picaro for emissions monitoring. UCA and CEO commented on the GIP application by CNG. UCA commented, even though CNG is not required to file a CHP or an emissions reduction plan under the relevant statute, they should still comply with the state's required decarbonization goals. As submitted, CNG's GIP does not capture the company's efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions represents a business as usual approach to gas planning. UCA also suggests that CNG's GIP does not provide an adequate view of the current state of its gas system. CEO complained about the breadth of information labeled as confidential and that the planned projects CNG submitted are not an adequate representation of CNG's infrastructure investments. They also argued the Commission should require CNG to provide additional reporting on an aggregated number of projects that are below the $2 million planned project threshold amount to assess whether the threshold for defining a planned project is appropriate. It also noted CNG did not include a forecast. Atmos's GIP was docketed as 24M0061G. Atmos serves approximately 126,000 customers across a disparate system spread across the state. The company maintains about 9% of the state's distribution main miles, but owns about 93% of the distribution and main miles that are comprised of bare steel. The company explains that its base, low, and high forecasts were submitted as part of its CHP application submitted in December 23. In the instant proceeding, Atmos translated these base, low, and high forecasts into design day requirements and compared those values to existing upstream capacity needs. The analysis is provided as confidential attachment H to its filing. Atmos submitted 15 and 30-year weather data for 10 regions to support its capacity forecasting efforts. Its GIP includes 10 planned system safety and integrity projects pursuant to Rule 4551F, projected to cost approximately $68 million in total. Half of the projects occur in the GIP action period from 2024 to 26, and half in the informational period from 27 to 29. Atmos states that it has no new business capacity expansion, mandatory relocation, or defined programmatic expenses as defined in Rules 4553A, 2B through E, respectively. With respect to coils, Atmos states that it has not previously tracked coils on its system and estimates it has just under 15,000 coils on its system of about 126,000 customers, and about 7,100 are in DI communities. It calculates this through GIS tools. Atmos uses 4 types of advanced leak detection, stating that by using multiple methods, it can better manage its workflow and optimize performance for varying survey needs. UCA commented that Atmos should provide a more detailed GIP identifying projects below the $3 million planned project threshold that may result in some greenhouse gas emissions. UCA also commented that it appears Atmos will socialize the cost of coils across all Atmos customers, which it opposes. UCA also suggested that Atmos should be required to provide an alternatives analysis for at least 2 of its planned projects using non-pipeline alternatives or other alternatives to traditional methods. CEO argued the Commission should require Atmos to provide additional reporting on an aggregated number of projects below the $3 million planned project threshold to assess the appropriateness of the threshold value. CEO suggests approximately 90% of Atmos's projects in the planned period are not accounted for in this GIP, and that Atmos's application should comply with GIP forecasting rules, including building codes, line extension policies, building electrification programs, and mapping rules, including the pressure district or geographic area served by the planned projects, existing and proposed regulator stations, and relevant electric service provider. Conservation advocates also provided extensive public comments, agreeing with many of the comments by UCA and CEO, but adding that the Commission should broaden GIP project criteria to include a larger, more representative set of projects. They also suggested Atmos should provide its total plans capital budget for the plans period, so it is possible to determine the fraction of Atmos's total budget the GIP projects represent. Finally, the Black Hills GIP application was docketed as 24M0062G. Black Hills explains that it serves 207,000 customers across the state and sources gas from various suppliers, including several interstate pipelines, public service company, and affiliate Rocky Mountain Natural Gas, LLC. The company projected base, low, and high forecasts and explained they are generally experiencing growth across their Front Range service territories, and that they are aware of some mountain towns within their service territories who are adopting stricter building codes. Black Hills forecast usage by calculating heating degree day through historical data. Peak day volume is determined by using the maximum 30-year heating degree day in the forecast analysis. Black Hills application did not explain the inputs to this forecast. However, in the workshop, they clarified that they do not take any forward-looking policy, law, or trends into account. Instead, they rely fully on historical data. They also clarified that they do not actually calculate low or high forecast scenarios based on different inputs, assumptions, or sensitivities. Rather, they calculate 2 standard deviations from the base forecast and then add or subtract that value from the base forecast to calculate the low and high forecast respectively. They believe this method will pick up most of the inputs and assumptions they would have included in low or high forecasts. Black Hills GIP identified 5 planned projects that met the budget threshold, including 1 system safety and integrity, 3 capacity expansion projects, and 1 mandatory relocation. The company asserts that the majority of their new business projects are under 3 million, and since they are driven by large customers and developers, are not easily forecasted or predictable. With respect to programmatic expenses, the company states it has none that exceed the $3 million threshold. Black Hills notes it replaces coils associated with at-risk meters that are damaged by outside forces and mitigates the future risk associated with those meters by moving the at-risk meter to the structure and replacing the coil with a service line. UCA commented that the company's initial GIP only offers a general representation of the company's planning process without sufficiently addressing the basis for that process. In addition, the plan gives an incomplete picture of the company's gas infrastructure spending when compared to the company's clean heat plan. CEO suggested the commission require Black Hills to comply with all forecasting, mapping, and stakeholder outreach requirements as required in different sections of the GIP rules. Commission staff, as I mentioned, held workshops and received these comments and later issued reports that were filed by additional comments approximately 6 weeks later. The reports determined that all three LDCs should endeavor to submit compliant forecasts, comprehensive maps with system interconnections and direction of gas flow, historical growth rates in customers, usage per customer, and peak throughput, and to reflect current DSM or CHP programs in their base forecasts, not just high or low scenarios. The parties submitted response to these staff reports, and in several areas, the LDCs indicated they would modify processes or otherwise incorporate staff recommendations. For example, in response to staff's recommendation that Black Hills improve the integrity of its customer count and usage forecasts, Black Hills says it agrees and will strive to include more granular values in future GIP filings. CNG agreed that GIP did not include the data set used to determine its regional temperatures and will incorporate this feedback in its next GIP application. Several of staff's recommendations were actually suggestions for the commission to evaluate potential rule modifications. These received the most feedback. I'll note two worth mentioning here. In one recommendation made across all three GIP reports, staff suggested the commission should consider requiring gas utilities to project forward total annual capital budgets for each year of the GIP period, as well as subtotal for each project category defined in the GIP rules. Such capital budget should include all projected expenditure, not just that associated with planned projects. Each utility should also submit a rate impact evaluation with the capital forecast. Black Hills indicated they strongly disagree with this recommendation as it was not contemplated in the original GIP rules and would add unnecessary regulatory burden. They say the commission struck the right balance by requiring information of projects over a certain threshold dollar amount. The public interest is not furthered by requiring the company to provide detailed information on minor routine capital expenditures. Atmos generally agrees and says such a drastic expansion of the GIP requirements would go far beyond the original intent to look at a subset of planned capital investments over a set dollar threshold and would significantly increase the burden associated with GIPs, particularly when they transition into adjudicated proceedings. However, if such a change is entertained, it should be thoroughly vetted through a rulemaking process which also considers potential efficiencies in gas utility cost recovery, such as formula rates or other recovery mechanisms for capital investments which are reviewed through the GIP process. A second staff recommendation made for all three LDCs said the commission should consider changes to the GIP rules whereby an applying utility submits no less than 4 capital projects for each defined infrastructure project category. If utility does not have the number of projects set in the rules, even below the capital threshold, it should state that and submit the number of projects it has. Black Hills disagree with this suggestion, saying the GIP requirements were developed over the course of approximately 20 months through the rulemaking process and several administrative proceedings. In the GIP rulemaking, the commission received well over 300 comment filings for participants, oral comments during 7 days of public comment hearings, and input from 6 community meetings around the state. Atmos also pushed back, stating that through the rulemaking process, the commission carefully considered where to set the dollar threshold, ultimately determining that projects exceeding $3 million in capital investment, as adjusted for inflation, should be presented in Atmos's GIP filing. The commission reasoned that the dollar value threshold is straightforward and easily comprehensible to the commission, application participants, and the broader public. And setting that dollar threshold at $3 million was appropriate because it will provide interveners and the commission an opportunity to review an appropriately sized range of investments while imposing a reasonable level of administrative burden. Staff strongly supports staff's recommendation because the intent of the threshold value established in the GIP rules was not just to review all new projects that were over the cost threshold, but also to ensure a fuller representation of known upcoming investment in terms of both number and range of projects to be implemented by the utility. UCA opposes staff's recommendation for two primary reasons. First, UCA argues this recommendation enables continuing capital investments in gas infrastructure to the detriment of achieving states' decarbonization goals, which are best supported through electrification, energy efficiency, and DSM. And second, UCA remains concerned with the potential for additional stranded assets created as a result of ongoing gas infrastructure investment. At this juncture, I can pause for your discussion, can answer any questions, or can provide a recommendation.
If you have a brief recommendation, that'd be great.
All right, I'll keep it brief. Advisors recommend the commission only take note of the filings, the interventions, and the staff reports. Thank everyone for their time and energy, and indicate you look forward to the LDC's continually improving the process so that gas planning provides affordable and reliable service in this period of significant transition. The applications were all made as informational filings, and opportunities to make further improvements are limited. The commission may also want to discuss revision to GIP rules in the near future, but advisors would recommend the commission withhold starting any process until we have an opportunity to review Public Service Company's upcoming GIP filing. That application, expected late May, will be the first GIP application to be heard as an adjudicatory proceeding, and is likely to provide the commission meaningful insight into the effectiveness of the GIP rules and general gas planning processes.
Thank you, Mr. Mendelson. I do have one comment, and then I'll turn it over to both of you. For me, I share many of the frustrations about the GIP process as generally outlined by UCA staff and the other parties. We spend a lot of time and effort looking at one specific type of investment, larger new capacity expansions, but have little visibility in the other capital investments in the bigger picture. Given this reality going forward, at least for me, I'd like to explore maybe spending a little less time on the MPA analysis, where the timing, information asymmetries, and utility financial incentives may make it challenging to implement good projects, and perhaps placing more focus on total capital spending and what it means for rates. I understand that these are M dockets and informational filings, and that it's awkward to order the utilities to take certain future actions in these cases. But even so, maybe I'd like to see some language in the order putting the utilities on notice that in the next GIP and maybe pending future rule changes, we'd like to see more comprehensive 5-year capital budgets and the impact of that spending on total and residential rates. So I'm probably a little more interested in shifting towards more of a top-down rather than a bottom-up approach. But Commissioner Gilman, I suspect you have some thoughts in this area.
I have some thoughts. Well, first of all, thank you to you, Mr. Mendelson. Really appreciate the work you put in here, Ms. Chula, who also put in a lot of work, and Ms. Rosati on the legal side. I appreciate all the work you all did in analyzing these filings, conducting those workshops, and completing the staff reports to get everybody up to speed on recommendations.
And thanks to the utilities and the parties, too. So didn't want to let that go.
Agreed. Yeah. First of all, I think responsive to some of your comments, to spend less time on the NPA analysis, most of these filings spent no time on an MPA analysis, so less than that would still be 0. So I just as a point of, we did not see really fulsome MPA analyses here, so I wouldn't say that was like a distraction or something that actually was a focus, just to be clear. I'm on board with your idea that like the total, and honestly put forth by a lot of the parties here, that the total spending matters, and I think that is something that the current GIP rules miss by focusing just on those larger projects. And I think we need to focus on both. Like, not having the perspective of the total spending is clearly kind of a miss and a place this can be improved. Yet if it's all viewed at this 30,000 foot kind of vague level, you never identify the actual areas for savings. So there has to be an approach where you can actually look at both, like look at individual projects that may not be the most cost effective path forward, which is the new paradigm that we've introduced, but look at it in the context of and understanding the total upcoming capital expenditures. So I don't think you have to kind of forsake one for the other. And I don't want to de-emphasize MPA analysis at a time where we didn't see much of any in these proceedings. I think we still need to see some progress come along on that. I think this is a bit of a mixed bag. We certainly gained a lot of new knowledge and understanding of these LDC systems that just simply there was not a process or an apparatus for before to understand. But of course, we've identified a lot of kind of shortcomings, and I think the staff reports do a good job of identifying places where even specifically the rules could be improved to ensure that we're getting more applicable information to kind of provide the context and provide like a better analysis of these systems. So certainly that's something we'll have to look at. When does that fit in? Where do we get? And I think there are certain improvements we can probably make and nudge in the meantime, but probably some of the largest improvements will be a result of changing the rules to better reflect what we know now and kind of our view of how these initial filings came in. I think keeping in mind the big picture here as we talk about this, like to me, the big picture, the point of the gift was to really get a fulsome review and a proactive view of what capital investment is coming on these systems and an honest analysis of any alternatives to ensure that every dollar we're spending is in the best interest of ratepayers. And if there is a more cost-effective option, that is really being evaluated such that we're coming to an optimized solution for ratepayers at the end of the day. And that's probably a long process. We are at the beginning. We're gathering the information and I think kind of figuring out how we really need to tailor these projects to make sure we can fulfill that vision and get there. But I think, I stand by and would like to see us reinforce that vision, that idea of this proactive review. I mean, at the end of the day, that's better for customers. I would argue it's also better for the utilities. They don't want to see capital investments disallowed in future rate cases, right? So the idea is let's get together on a process that can really, view and vet these especially large expenditures coming before the money's already spent out the door, and then it's very awkward and difficult to analyze alternatives. I appreciate the staff reports pointing out forecasting. Forecasting was probably one of the biggest areas where we saw deficiencies in these filings. So appreciate the staff expressing, I think, an expectation that in the next filing, we see compliant forecasting, compliant with the rules that are already on the books. I would just reiterate, I think a concern I've said before, certainly in the context of public service, that I have concerns if we don't see compliant forecasting, how we can really tell if capacity expansion projects are actually substantiated in a record or not. That remains a concern for each of the utilities here. I think there are really valid concerns about project inclusion, including, looking at if the $3 million threshold is appropriate, looking at the total budget upcoming, as you mentioned, Chairman. And then, I think there are some other interesting things that came up here that maybe we didn't necessarily contemplate in the rules. The use of supplemental supply points on the system. I learned some of that in this process that just we don't have a venue for. We're not seeing somewhere else. So some of that maybe we should address. One thing I'm just still not clear on, I don't know that Mr. Mendelson, but in Colorado Natural Gas's application talks quite a bit about the Port Colorado project. I was unclear expected to be a CPCN, or what will happen next? I'm not sure you know the answer to that question, but I went back and re-listened to the workshop. I'm still not clear if we expect any next step on that project.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. It might have been during the confidential portion of the workshop, but I also listened to the recording and couldn't recall.
Okay, yeah, and I understand it's somewhat in the preliminary stages, yet they're still kind of trying to plan for it, absent an application for actual service. But I just was trying to understand, when do we re-see this, a very major project for a very small gas LDC. So obviously that's of a lot of interest as we move forward. Yeah, so anyway, just wanted to reinforce a lot of what we saw in the staff's reports, and certainly encourage the utilities to really take seriously what they see in there as staff suggestions on the deficiencies and staff suggestions for upcoming rule changes. Clearly, there's not going to be any rule changes before January 2026 when the next informational gifts come in, but certainly it's something I very much expect will be done before the first adjudicated filings, and I don't want kind of any claims we didn't know what was coming, we didn't know what the concerns were, the shortcomings. So I'd certainly encourage the utilities to take those suggestions seriously and try to take steps in the next informational filing to address some of the concerns they saw within those staff reports.
Commissioner Plant.
Thank you. I would agree with your comments, and also the thanks to all the parties and to the team that worked on this here at the PUC. And I also agree with you, Mr. Mendelson, that changes to the rules would be better off to wait until after the next the adjudicated proceeding that we have coming up with public service here in the next few months. One thing that, and as you pointed out, Commissioner Gilman, I mean, they're going to, that process, you've got the adjudicated process that's going to take a while, the rules process that will then take a while after that, and we'll be getting informational filings before then, but I think it would behoove the utilities to look at a variety of the recommendations that have been made here just in preparation for the next informational filing. And one of the things, I mean, there were a number of things that I agreed with in the recommendations, but one of the things that really struck me was how there's a historical look at the design day data going back 30 years when, as we're looking forward, another 20 years on what we expect the investments are going to be needed to be, which makes them about 50 years off by the time you finish without any adjustment to recognize the kind of climate change that we've already experienced over the last 30 years and are likely to experience over the next 20. So I think that there needs to be some sort of a modification to that calculation as it's being used, and I suspect that we maybe will address that in the rules. But as I mentioned, that we're going to have a number of proceedings that happen prior to then, and I think that it would be good for the utilities to start looking at that in a creative way that would give us more accurate information. But appreciate the participation of all the parties, and I would agree with the recommendation.
So, Mr. Mendelson, does that give you what you need to begin drafting a TBC order in all three cases? Is silence assent, Mr. Davis? Ms. Rosati?
I'm comfortable speaking for Mr. Mendelson on this point. Yes, as long as all three commissioners agree with the kind of general guidance that each of the other commissioners provided, then yes, we can include these points in the orders for all three TBC decisions.
I think there may still be some tension between me and Commissioner Gilman, but I think we can work it out in the, not more broadly, just on this.
Work it out with the gavel.
Yeah. I think we can work out on the TBC process. So thank you, Ms. Rosati. Thank you, Mr. Mendelson. Anything else on this, Ms. Rosati?
No, that's it. Thank you.
I think that concludes our agenda. Commissioner Gilman, final thoughts, comments?
Nothing additional. Thanks.
Commissioner Plant?
Nothing additional. Thanks a lot.
With that, we're adjourned. Thanks all.